That 85% of successful entrepreneurs wake up at 6 a.m. or earlier.
I can see the whole wide world with these two eyes, and I can be whoever I wanna be, 'cause it's my life.
Hi, thanks for joining us for another episode of Ask Spurrell CPA. Today we're talking about organizing your calendar for success. I have Matt Hammond, Synesis Financial. So Matt, what can you tell us about the calendar of most entrepreneurs?
It's generally chaotic. There's no set time slots. The not important, not urgent tasks or not urgent but important tasks just get shuffled on and on and on until they wait. They're up at 3:45 the night before doing all their bookkeeping and taxes.
Who is that?
This guy.
Happens to all of us every once in a while. So the quote that we have here today is Zig Ziglar quote, and he says, "Lack of direction, not lack of time, is the problem. We all have 24-hour days." So the statistic is, researchers estimate that it takes 23 minutes to reach our peak intellectual capacity once we are interrupted from something as simple as a text message or a social media update. And, the story that we have here is exactly, and this is what I run into, exactly what Matt just said, is business owners, they're tackling problems in the order that they receive them, or based on which problems scream the loudest, rather than working on the things that are actually the most important to drive the business forward. So, Matt, what are the questions that these entrepreneurs, what should they be asking?
What time do most entrepreneurs wake up?
So it's not just anecdotally for me. There's a lot of research on this. There's been one really good statistical study on this, and it found that 85% of successful entrepreneurs wake up at 6 a.m. or earlier. So it's not that you can't wake up earlier. It's just that we're already facing really tough odds as entrepreneurs. Why don't we just play the odds? We're far more likely to succeed.
And why do they do that?
You're less likely to get interrupted in the morning. So there's, far less chance that, your phone is not going to ring at 6:05 in the morning, but, at 10:23, your phone is now ringing. You're now getting interrupted. Your staff are now walking through the door. So there are so many more things that you can actually do in the morning without the chance of being interrupted. That's a lot more difficult to, isolate yourself from those things that are going to, interrupt you and make you stupider, basically. So they're going to distract you. It's the point. For 23 minutes after becoming distracted, we are not in our peak intellectual capacity. So why are we doing our most important work at that time?
Yeah. And I'm a family guy. You're a family guy.
Yeah.
A lot of entrepreneurs are family people. They want to spend more time with their kids.
Yeah.
How does waking up early actually help that?
So let's say you do have that crazy entrepreneur schedule. You are working the 80 hours a week that I'm working. I'm sure you're working too, that sort of schedule. And, if you start at 9 a.m., that 80 hours a week goes, if you just map it out on a calendar, your kids are now in bed by the time you get home. But if you want to do 80 hours a week and you're up at 6 or 5 or earlier, now all of a sudden you're actually getting home and the kids are still awake. There actually is a family time. So I would suggest that it's more important for business owners who actually have or want a family. Getting up early is the way, because your kids won't hang out with you at 2 o'clock in the morning. It just doesn't work that way. So.
Not like what's called your bed, but
yeah.
You mentioned your peak intellectual capacity early in the morning. So why is it the most important to tackle your most difficult tasks during that time? Yeah.
So it's not just that we're getting interrupted, but even we're just smarter earlier. Our intellectual capacity actually wanes statistically throughout the day. Mm-hmm. So you have those difficult tasks, those ones that you naturally want to procrastinate on, knock them out in the morning, because you're actually more likely to actually get them done. So rather than leave them towards the end of the day where we have less of an intellectual capacity, these are the ones you want to work on in the morning. So you're working on those really difficult projects. Whether you're on the tools as an electrician or me as an accountant, I'm working on difficult problems, or I'm setting the strategy for the business. I'm actually working on those templates that every staff member is going to use. those checklists that every staff member, those are not the ones where you want to make the mistake on. You can leave that towards the end of the day. A lot of times, client meetings are a little less draining, although the client perceives them as easier. We've already done the heavy lifting at this point. We're just communicating what's already been done. It's like the same thing if you're working in a trades position. You've already done the work. You're just explaining to the customer what you already did at this point.
Yeah. You mentioned your team and staff. How does always having a set calendar help you leverage that team?
Yeah, so that set calendar is going to have more importance once you have a team, because they're going to know, when they can coordinate with you. So they know it's not a great idea. Everyone talks about the open door policy. Well, that open door policy isn't everything it's cracked up to be, because everyone's just getting distracted all the time. You can have the best of both worlds, where you can have that focused solitary time where you're unavailable, but you can also have that time where you are available. I am going to be available at this time, and you can count on me that I'm available at this time. And that's not something that you can do unless you set that aside. Also, you can even leverage your team. If your team understands your calendar, they know when you can do client appointments, they know when you can onboard new clients, then you can completely step away from that appointment scheduling and a lot of the onboarding process, and you can simply attend the appointment. If you're a contractor, you can just attend the estimate. But if you don't have that set calendar with everything blocked out, now you got to be the one that's on the phone and penciling it into your calendar that no one else understands. If you want to leverage a team, you got to have that set calendar.
Yeah. So when you're setting your calendar, what's an appropriate time block, and what happens if it's too short?
So the time block will vary from industry to industry. I've found here that my optimal time block is about 2 hours. Sometimes I multiply it by 2 and that becomes 4 hours. But I find it has to be at least 2 hours in my business, because it will if it's too short, you're continually just learning about problems, or you're learning about issues, but you're not actually solving them, right? Mm-hmm. And it could be different. Some businesses, it could theoretically be as short as 15 minutes. But what the key is that you want to make sure that you're actually resolving things in those time blocks. You're actually accomplishing things in those time blocks, not just learning about them. So you want to have time to learn, understand, and execute all within that time block. And it'll change from industry to industry, but the key is it's got to be long enough that you actually get to execution.
Yeah. So why should you take time to develop your product or service? Why should that be an ongoing, regular thing in your schedule?
Yeah, so a lot of business owners will look at, once I get this template rolled out, once I finally implement this new CRM, everything else will go smoother. You should stop looking at all of these development and perfecting your projects, your product or service as a one-time event, and start looking at them as something that you have to do all the time, continually in your business. If you're not continually getting your product or service better, your competition is going to pass you, right? And you're going to drive yourself nuts in not blocking that into your calendar, because then you're up to 3 o'clock in the morning. You're doing things that don't make sense anymore in your calendar. You're letting other things that are really important slide, because you're starting to think that these projects will never recur again. Mm-hmm. But actually implementing improvement of your products or processes, that's a continual event, and it should be scheduled into your calendar.
And if you get really busy, do you start shuffling things off? Because if clients want to meet you or prospects want to meet you, do you start to push some of those things off?
That can be one of the number one things, and a lot of times it'll be marketing. People will shuffle off marketing. They're like, okay, I got leads coming through the door, I'm busy on projects, I'm going to shuffle marketing. But that's probably the number one thing that you don't want to shuffle, because all of your marketing initiatives likely don't work if you stop and start them. Most of your marketing initiatives, probably if you start them today, they're going to start working 6 months from now. So, is that project you're working on going to take you longer than 6 months? Is there no chance that you're ever going to get fired from that project, or that project isn't going to turn down? Has one of your clients ever paid your mortgage payment if you didn't have a project next month? So I don't think that's the case. So that can be, you can start shifting off those important ones like marketing, or like getting your product and service better. A lot of times you're not getting your product and service better, but you're continually putting out fires. So these are ones that you really can't put off. Even if there is a little bit of pressure to put them off, they're really critical for your business.
Yeah. Yeah. How does your calendar dictate company culture?
Yeah, this was one that, you start hearing about people say culture. I'm going to have a strong culture. I'm going to build a strong culture. And they struggle doing it. And then you look at their calendar, and their calendar doesn't actually say that they're going to build a strong culture. A culture is like a relationship. It's a relationship with your employees, but you don't have any time on your calendar to meet with your employees. And somehow you're going to have this culture, even though you've cooked up this literary masterpiece in your brain of what that culture looks like, and you can talk a good game. Have you actually talked that game in front of your employees? So things like, do you have a daily huddle with your team? Do you have a weekly training session? Because I got a newsflash for everybody out there with their monthly staff meetings. Monthly is probably the minimal threshold to maintain what you already have. Maybe you might maintain what you already have if you do it monthly. But if you actually want to improve the culture, and if you want to get better, I would think weekly is a better threshold for that. And those daily huddles can even accelerate that even quicker.
Yeah. Should you block time for emails and calls, or do you take those as they come?
You should block the time. So you should actually block the time. This is when I'm going to take emails. This is when I'm going to take calls, and this is when I can address burning fires. You can't let that burning fire run into the whole day. You can't let that one project that became difficult ruin the other three that are going smoothly, because they'll become a burning fire tomorrow. You can't use that burning fire as an excuse not to do your marketing, or else you'll put out the burning fire just to sit around twiddling your thumbs next week because you don't have any projects to work on. So you really do need to block times for emails, calls, burning fires, and once you get to a certain level, and if you got that calendar really set, you can probably block someone else's time to do the emails and calls. And that's really how you start to leverage that calendar and organize your calendar for business success.
Great.
So that's what we have here today. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, please hit the like and subscribe button so we can continue to deliver you tips on how to beat the odds at business. And we look forward to reading your comments below so we can respond back and use your input to develop future content. Thanks very much.